Russell T here, Russell the Davies. Funny. I'm the Doctor, I'm a Time Lord, and I could have a catchphrase. I could have a great catchphrase, like, my catchphrase could be kill dommage, like kill dommage, Davros. Like, and I could, like, instead of like having a sonic screwdriver, I could have like boom, think about my eyes, like sonic, like, kill dommage, Davros.
Who cares about years and years? Episode 1, 2019 to 2024. So, RTD, Russell T Davies, Russell the Davies, the man who brought Doctor Who back in 2005 and ran it through the Eccleston Tennant years. This is his newest show, Years and Years.
We start in 2019. What will life be like? What will it be like in 10 years' time, 5 years' time? And the action zooms forward to 5 years' time, to 2024. And then every week we zoom forward another year and we see them surviving the politics, the economy, the changes, just as we are doing now. It's a metaphor for now, how we all survive in the world now, but told through a family saga.
In fact, it's the only show any Doctor Who runner is managing to create this year at all. The first episode covered this year, 2019 to 2024, the last year of the projected Trump term it predicted.
It really kicks off in 2024, which would be the end of Trump's second presidency anyway, which I'm quite sure is going to happen.
What did we all think?
I thought it was very inimically RTD.
Yes.
Like, it bore his imprint all over it in every single aspect. For better or worse, it's something that only he would ever write, which isn't all you can ask for, really.
Very much so.
Yeah, in that vein, when I watched it, it's kind of like there weren't any surprises to me. It was sort of what I expect a Russell script to be like, except in that I was perfectly happy with it.
Yeah.
In terms of surprises, and this is very RTD again, I didn't even notice that Rosie, the youngest sibling of the family, was in a wheelchair until like a bit over halfway through the episode when she's on the date with that single dad.
We're all thinking of the same scene, aren't we?
It's very RTD how naturalistically he does characters with different impairments and different sexualities and all that. It just feels very natural. What did you think of the aspects of the years it had in the future?
It seems to be quite a fevered time, so it's trying to capture that, it's trying to guess where we're going, but it's not about the accuracy of the guesses, it's about how we survive.
Things like the second term for Trump, or the headline about Doris Day, it edited into the episode at the 11th hour, all the little futuristic touches.
I didn't notice anything about the 11th hour. I did notice some bits from Deep Breath.
Very funny. Which Deep Breath bits are you talking about?
Oh, there's the part where the mother keeps saying, I'm right here, standing in front of you, while her daughter is wearing that horrifying filter mask.
Yeah.
With the Snapchat filter mask, it gave me an impression of, like, this is what, like, boomers think Snapchat is actually like. That's kind of the vibe I got from it. It's sort of that twisted interpretation of something.
You're not off, because I'm a bit of a boomer and I think that's what Snapchat is like, so you're spot on.
Yeah, I picked that up from some other stuff in this show, and I mean, there is that YouTube thing now that's sort of like that, and other face faking things, but it was really visually upsetting.
Yeah, I thought it was not too out of touch. I don't think augmented reality filters like that are too crazy of a direction to take Snapchat, even if the actual dialogue Russell writes around it is very boomerish. Did you notice in the montage of the birthdays, you saw a more older version of the filter thing that Bethany was wearing on her face in the first Winter Feast? I thought it was cool how we saw the technology develop.
I did, yeah. Yeah, I did notice that. At the time, I thought that it was an odd thing for her to be wearing.
I think what made it truly creepy was the infantilization aspect. The fact that she was like she was talking like a baby, basically.
Yeah.
That creeped the hell out of me. It was a bit Toclafane, actually, wasn't it? It was a bit Toclafane.
Yeah. Good catch. Another thing, you mentioned the montage, and this is perfectly RTD, is that the solemnity of the Queen's death is in itself a comedy beat, because it interrupts that peppy, upbeat montage with the funeral.
I thought it was super telling that it was the grandma who was shown, like, mourning the Queen, and so it focused on her specifically. Like, she's the generation who would still care about that. Well, that was quite interesting. It was very well done. I like that.
And in that montage, you sort of barely even see the grandma outside of her reacting to things that are happening on TV, like first Trump's second term and then the Queen dying, or the other way around.
Yeah.
Which is weird how you see the older character sort of related to the TV, whereas like normally that would typically be associated with like the younger generation.
Yeah, you saw Rory Kinnear's family didn't even have a TV, he said later on. I thought that was interesting. But they had what they called a vision that they watched Guardians 4 on, which I assume is, I've seen this talked about sometimes where studios are thinking, what if when a movie came out in theaters, we let people rent it for like $200 or something to have like 4 hours to watch it in their own house. So I thought that was a neat little touch because TVs are being used less by younger people, definitely.
Yeah.
The impression I got of the vision was that since it seems like it's something that you need to sort of reserve ahead of time, I was thinking, oh, well, that must obviously be their VR rig.
Yeah, the first thing I thought when I heard it was like holodeck, Red Dwarf sort of thing.
Yeah, they can only afford, one room with room for only like 2 or 3 people in it.
Yeah.
Admittedly, when I heard that the two sort of teenagers were like reserved it for several hours, like my thoughts went to a concerned place.
Which reminds me, is Clyde her gay best friend or her bisexual boyfriend?
The latter, I think.
I can see that. The bit that he had, the line about Daddy Pratt can have it whenever he wants was funny, but I also felt this weird cognitive dissonance. I'm not sure if the joke is supposed to be that in the future people will refer to Chris Pratt that way, because people were referring to Chris Pratt that way in 2014. And it's just going to get worse as time goes by. It's going to end up like David Harbour.
I thought it was more that Rory Kinnear and the General were just kind of amused or confused by how open the boyfriend was about, describing his lust for the man. That is Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
I think they pointed out that he was like 13 years old. I think they were sort of expressing that kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe how sexualized the youth are now. It truly, the world's going to the dogs. Their future is a fucking nightmare.
They're porn classes.
It's the porn classes.
Oh yeah. I think there were 2 things. There was they mentioned a sex fighting class at one point, and then later on they mentioned the porn class as well.
Sex fighting.
Saturday makes sense because you won't be rushing off and Ruby's at a sex fighting class, so the 3 of us can sit down together and have a nice long chat. Isn't that right, Beth?
Ruby's been telling us about her porn class.
What?
No way, seriously, you don't actually have porn class.
No, it's called sexual awareness imaging control.
Well,
yeah, they didn't explain that first one. It was very weird.
That's why the younger daughter was out of the house on Saturday when Bethany wanted to talk to her parents. She had a sex fighting class.
That.
I wonder if Russell gets these ideas from like conversations with Moffat. Like Moffat just casually brings up the idea of a fighting class, and Russell absolutely horrified.
It sounds like he's getting half these ideas from crazy people on Facebook complaining about, oh, do you hear what they're having our kids do next year? Like, this feels like, do any of you know what the Common Core is?
Yeah.
In American education, yeah.
I don't know.
This feels like Common Core panic.
Could you explain what it is?
God, no.
No?
I graduated in 2006. Gun to my head, I couldn't tell you what the Common Core is.
So I think the gist of it is it's basically just like a modern way of doing like math and stuff, isn't it? That the boomer generation doesn't understand.
Yeah, and a lot of friends who are parents or friends who have young parents, they are trying to follow it, and it makes them lose their shit in the most hilarious ways. And I could see somebody seeing the Common Core and thinking about how it might apply to sexual education and coming up with porn classes.
I didn't get the sense the porn classes were like being reviled by Russell or anything. I think the older generation was, having a laugh at it.
It's certainly presented as something to be provocative and shocking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Real world audience, yeah.
What I thought was really interesting with that dialogue was possibly the most self-aware moment of the episode when the daughter was talking about the stereotype that Toby fit into about her.
Woo, love it.
You're on the list. Category 15, middle-aged gay male, likely to mock boundaries and force sexual references into my orbit.
Daddy! Bang on, I'd say.
That was one of the many things that sort of put together a thing I've been working out about Russell Tovey and Davies' use of him in this and in Doctor Who. I haven't seen much of Davies' other works, so I can't really say for sure how common this theme is, but I realized, Oh, so this is what a Davies self-insert is like.
Self-insert's a very interesting term to use for what Russell T Davies thinks of him, yeah.
But you know how people always complain about how all Moffat heroes are basically Moffat, but still a teacher, or Moffat, but a time traveler, Moffat, but a private detective. And I finally see, okay, so this is what the Davies version of that is.
I did get that sense that Davies was maybe giving Russell Tovey's character some of those things that, you know, RTD maybe would have said in that situation. Like the whole sort of lecturing the, you know, Brexiteer, kind of lecturing the husband about the flat earth and stuff. I don't know if that necessarily verges on self-insert, but like there's a bit of that in there, surely.
Tovey outlines the whole series when he's holding Rosie's second baby and he says, oh, what's the future going to be like?
We've got fake news and false facts. I don't even know what's true anymore. What sort of world are we in? Because if it's this bad now, what's it going to be like for you?
You know, there's all these fake facts and things. How can you bring kids in this world? What's going to change? Like that was in the trailer because that feels like the brief for the whole series. So I definitely see the author insert.
And don't even start me on ISIS.
And the bit later on where he's yelling at his husband about him being a truther is also very much presented as in the scene that follows that, where he's complaining about how people are getting stupider.
Yeah,
that whole conversation between Russell Tovey and Rory Kinnear. So especially, I think Daniel and Stephen, I think their names are. That whole conversation between them about how humanity is going backwards and stuff. That was very like, those two were kind of like the bastion of sanity in this crazy world, weren't they?
Yeah.
That's kind of the impression I got.
Ralph, you teach children, please don't say the world is flat. I'm not saying it is. I'm just keeping an open mind.
But I think because it was done, all that like flat earth stuff was done with what I thought was like such precision. It avoided from feeling like those characters were sort of, oh, everyone around me is stupid and I'm enlightened.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I thought it was really tastefully done.
It rang very true to me, that conversation. I find it even more disturbing than the big climactic nuke thing, that conversation between Tovey and his husband about the flat earth stuff, just because I've had so many conversations like that when it turns into a thing about how you're prescribing the truth, even though it is an actual outside truth that then they're contextualizing in like personal, social terms.
Subjective terms.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying I'm absolutely right, okay, which means you can't say I'm absolutely wrong. Except you're never going to stop, are you? God help anyone trying to contradict you.
I'm not saying I'm absolutely right, which means you can't say I'm absolutely wrong.
Yeah. That might have been my favorite line of the thing.
Yeah. It's Zoom is, you know, if you don't grow up with being part of an event or an event being in your orbit, it's so much easier to disassociate. That's why, you know, the rise of so much neo-Nazi stuff is the more the elderly die off, the less actual reality those times have for people.
Yeah, we even see that at the end where the grandmother, who would of course be the only one who actually lived through, I was going to say Blitz, but I don't actually know if that math lines up, but did live through the Cold War and has memories of that, is the one who's least panicky.
Yeah. What did we think of the Russell T Davies predicting Trump will get a second term?
Loved that.
I think that's Davies for you.
I just thought, you know, it's a very bold statement, and it taps into that pessimism which I think a lot of people feel about this sort of upcoming election, and I think it was the right choice to make for this show. I think
it's like the perfect counter programming to like hope punk shit.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what you'd call this, like folk despair, like as opposed to hope punk, or
yeah. I mean, this sequel to that Brexit movie is way better.
Although I something I did notice, I sort of had a bit of a spat with Neo about this, is that while we see the outcome of the 2020 American election, they later on allude to a general election in the UK, which we do not find out the outcome of. And it's kind of interesting to see the lines where the show is kind of willing to show kind of outcomes and where it's kind of has to stay vague in order to avoid, you know, kind of maybe alienating or dating itself. Like, it's kind of interesting how when it gets to the UK, it has to kind of tiptoe around stuff. There's quite sensitive political territory there that maybe isn't there in for America.
You had a spat over this?
Not a spat, but you know.
Could you say there's more diversity of outcome of how things in the UK might unfold, whereas in America, Like, we didn't hear who the Democratic nominee was that lost against Trump, but Trump winning is a pretty binary thing. He'll win or he won't. Whereas this could be wrong. You know, I'm Australian, not British, but the UK situation seems to me like there's a lot more ways it could go.
With the UK, it's like, I think a lot of this sort of whole, okay, we're writing dystopian fiction about the future of the UK and stuff, a lot of this kind of hinges on the idea that, you know, things kind of won't change, or things won't go off in some unexpected new direction and stuff. And it doesn't really matter who wins or who loses the next general election. But the problem with that, of course, is that actually it rather does matter who wins the next general election, because, you know, a certain man with the initials JC exists, and, you know, British politics has sort of been put into a whole shitstorm by that fact. So it's kind of, it poses quite an issue for kind of anyone trying to write about the future of politics in the UK. And they kind of, if they don't kind of grapple with this kind of weird kind of quasi-socialist sort of thing that's looming up over stuff, they're kind of forced to just kind of not acknowledge it, really.
Yeah.
You know what it is? You saying that, you just reminded me the bit where Stephen is saying that it's like something happened and we stop. It's
punctured.
It's the end of history. You know? It's neoliberalism. You cannot possibly conceive of an alternative to...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I found that fascinating because there's obviously some veracity to it in terms of the denigration of certain aspects of society and information and media control and whatnot. But also, the Gran makes me think of this. It's so generational. Like, he's saying we didn't used to think about politics. It used to be fine. If we go back 30 years, I don't think the Gran would say that, of 30 years ago when she was living through her middle-age years at that time. It's very much when I was a child, everything seemed so simple. There were no complicated politics when I was 5. Now I'm 40 and everything's so complicated. The world's going to shit. It's funny because every generation seems to go through this same kind of blinkered reality.
Yeah.
But for all the failures of the times Russell is predicting, I don't really think it's fair to say that time is completely broken down and society is punctured and everything's terrible and we should all be apathetic perhaps now because Trump's thrown a nuke. Like, there used to be nukes, there used to be, crises. 2 nukes were detonated once. It's not all new things being bad.
In Stephen's speech, he even mentioned that, we made all those great paintings and wrote all those great songs, and then we just stopped. So there's literally an element of like, I was born in the wrong generation, guys. There used to be good music in the past. There's no more now. All modern stuff is bad.
There used to be Doctor Who every year.
So what do you think happens to Doctor Who in the Years and Years universe?
I kind of get the sense that Doctor Who is just sort of trucking along, still being kind of shit in this timeline. Like, I don't see it having some radical overhaul.
Maybe we should have like a bit at the end of this podcast to just share all of our trite Doctor Who comparisons, because I have a few, but
yeah. No, we can do it. The one that comes to mind for me is Keith as a Cyberman.
And it's also Bethany's plot is Bells of St. John, except reverse, sorta.
Is there anything that a sex bot could say that would make you less horny than the words orifice open? Seriously.
That whole scene. I had such complicated feelings about the robot, because up until that part, there's so much anxiety and tension in the episode. And then the robot shows up, and it's so silly looking that immediately all threat is completely deflated. And then they start having sex, and in my mind I thought, oh yeah, they're probably going to make the robot join in. And then the scene takes the turn that it does, and suddenly all that weird anxiety and tension is back only 1,000 times worse. And that is the sort of thing that I love Davies for, that he can just turn on a dime and have something that's horrifying and adorable and ridiculous and stupid and genius at the same time. It's the Slitheen all over again.
I was really concerned with that orifice device because it looked so thin and plastic and unpleasant to use.
What if it had been the whole time I was watching that, I was thinking, she's kind of being judgmental. What if it had been like a fleshlight or a vibrator?
Or a concrete slab.
Or a concrete... Oh, God.
I was kind of wondering why the orifice didn't look more sort of fleshlight-esque. It was kind of weird they just had it be like a thin plastic cylinder. Wasn't it, like smooth edges? Like,
I bet that there's a prop guy at the BBC who sat down, who spent a lot of nights sitting up thinking about what can I get away with in this scene.
I think the other obvious Doctor Who comparison would be Turn Left or Last of the Time Lords, these kind of doomsday scenarios.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The storyteller is basically Martha, complete with the same music.
The storyteller, well, when I said the most self-aware moment of the episode was the thing about Rory Kinnear's younger daughter calling out Tovey and perhaps RTD by extension, I think the least self-aware moment was when the storyteller was going on about how stories have so much power and storytellers should be revered because they're so incredible. I wasn't buying what the storyteller was selling. What did you guys think?
I'm a storyteller. The shape of stories and the need for them. Stories help them to make sense of the world.
I thought that, I wasn't sure what to make of it because I kind of assumed that maybe he was trying to make a point that, stories can't save us, which I was hoping that would be the angle that they were going with, because that's, not usually the kind of thing you see in a drama like this, specifically by a writer like Davies.
I can see that.
But I guess you kind of have to see how it'll develop over the next 5 episodes before I can fully judge.
It's too early to judge.
I bet that the finale is going to have some post-apocalyptic scenario, and then everyone gathered around a fire and a storyteller, whether that specific one or someone else, telling the story of the last 30 years or whatever. It felt like such a seeded thing to me.
Yeah, I feel like that is one of the 2 possible outcomes of this whole thing.
What's the other one?
Remember that scene where he's holding the baby and thinking about what it's going to be like in the future?
Oh no.
He could just be thinking about this. If he dies in a future episode, we'll know that that's not what's happening.
Oh, so you're saying it could all be in his imagination, is what you're saying?
Yeah, and then
no.
Davies wouldn't. On one level, I think Davies wouldn't do that, but then I remember Last of the Time Lords.
You should never do that.
And to be fair, resetting time is not the same as saying it was all a dream, okay? I mean, if it was Moffat, it might be all a simulation, maybe. He's done that before.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
In terms of Doctor Who comparisons, I think specifically to Series 11, what's interesting is how it's similar and how it's different. And visually, you can kind of say it's similar because it's using the same Netflix 2:1 aspect ratio. You see how we've got the black bars at the top and the bottom, making it a little more cinematic. But musically, this ain't Sagan. This is Marigold. Murray Gold is back. What did we think of his music in the episode?
The last 2 minutes and 41 seconds of the episode having the same insistent drum beat going throughout.
I was fascinated by that because when we had the double kicks going and the chanting voices and very heavy kind of music, it reminded me of something Tomtit brought up when we were discussing Resolution about the punk music that a certain Whozer was listening to after Twice Upon a Time.
I mean, I kind of loved the score of this. I don't know how you guys felt about it, but it seemed like Marigold is kind of still, he's picking up on all the musical ideas he developed in the Capaldi era, like those sort of acoustic guitar stabs that he used a lot, and sort of dizzying arpeggios, which you can kind of hear in the start of Into the Dalek sort of thing.
Yeah.
The date of the general election has been announced as Thursday, May the 5th.
I will be standing. Yes, it's about time.
The birthday montage sequence, I was loving the arpeggios in that.
Like you almost can't even call it a theme. It's like a sting at the very beginning. It sounded like kind of like clown world sort of music, this weird carnival vibe.
I love what he's doing with the sort of the choirs in this. I think it kind of reminds me of Cucumber a bit. There was something similar there, but it was more gospel-like with Cucumber. Whereas for this one, it's a bit more like sort of a choir of children, kind of that sort of. I do like that creepy vibe. And did you guys watch the Next Time teaser at the end? Because that had this super moody, eerie, ambient version of it, which I thought was like, oh my god, wow.
Did you know you can live forever?
Amazing.
And I had a conga line.
The copy I have ended with the, next up on BBC things. And one of those funny moments of things lining up in weird ways. On one side of the screen, they're talking about As part of Mental Health Awareness Week, we're showing the incredible PTSD, The War in My Head. And on the other side of the screen, there's this chanting, pounding, screaming music as the world is entering World War III. So that was beautiful.
There's one thing of the episode that I think bears some discussion. So when the general from Hellbent, I mean Rory Kinnear's wife, is going through her daughter's internet history, and she finds all this stuff, and none of it says the word transgender, but it all has trans, and it's like living as a trans teen person, trans this. None of it specifies transhuman. So it's obviously a bait and switch to the parents and to the audience that we all think their child's going to be transgender. And they aren't, because when we get the conversation, she says, well, she doesn't say she's not transgender. She says she's not transsexual.
If it turns out that we've got a lovely son instead of a lovely daughter, then we'll be happy.
I'm not transsexual. I'm transhuman.
Sure, we say gender now, don't we? I'm sorry.
What did you think of that?
Oh, you know what? This is an excellent discussion for four-ish guys to be having. I would love to get some perspectives on this that aren't just my own. I don't know how trans people are taking it, but
I've seen some maybe some reservations about it expressed over at the Eruditorum Discord.
Yeah,
not surprised.
I know two people that were probably going to watch the show and aren't doing it because of that line in the trailer. They were so turned off by the transsexual thing.
Like Lydia, who plays the daughter Bethany, this is her first television job, I think, and she's astonishing. She's absolutely amazing.
And I know some people are saying it might have been, to make a point about, outdated language and stuff like that, but it reads so oddly to me because it's the teenager that's saying the outdated term, and then the parents are saying, we thought it was transgender. Yeah. The whole thing reads very oddly to me. I can't find a way into that, why that term would be used instead. And then just things like the teen is literally talking about having her body completely medically destroyed in Switzerland. That just reads really poorly to me when we're drawing a straight line between being transgender and being transhuman. And then the mum saying, we're cutting off internet access so you don't read this shit. I was just like, this is obviously drawing a line to real things in a way that feels...
net here.
Yeah.
It's turfy.
And I guess because, Russell, as a writer, he doesn't normally sort of twist, the way people naturally speak for the sake of a reveal. That's more of, Moffat's purview, which is, aside from the actual, textual weirdness of it, I think that's part of why it seems so clunky, because it seemed like Russell sort of going a bit beyond his reach, or beyond his strengths, I should say.
It was more Cassandra than Alonzo Frame.
Yeah.
This whole thing of taking sort of a sci-fi concept and using it to sort of drawing a line between it and something from real life. So, Zygons as immigrants, for example. I think it's riddled with problems in the same way. Because if something, we're gonna recycle your body and put you into the cloud. Oh, well, it's a parallel between that and being transgender, right? And actually, well, no, it isn't. It's really something very different. This is something you've made up, right? And it's got all its own nuances.
It's like making the X-Men black people.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a tricky tightrope to walk, and I think you have to be very responsible and careful with doing if you do it at all. And I've got some concerns about where it might be going, even if it's going in an ultimately positive direction. I'm just
What even is a positive direction for this take? I mean,
good question.
Yeah, this is very concerning.
I noticed a possible somewhere it might be going. I noticed very briefly one of Rosie's kids, the little white kid, was on his phone and he was using this sort of dog Snapchat filter on his phone. I kind of wondered is that meant to sort of seed in our heads that he's gonna have. He was sat with Bethany in the grandma's front room later on. God, I'm explaining this very badly. And I'm wondering, is there going to be some sort of plot line where she, the sort of transhuman girl, starts spreading sort of her desire to be transhuman to the other kids? And that's.
Oh, you're talking about rapid onset human dysphoria?
Yeah, that was my concern, right? That is such a yikes for me if it goes in that direction.
Oh my god.
Jesus Christ.
Oh my god.
Yeah, in the trailers you've got, do you know you can live forever? I'm like, are we doing this?
I hope the series in general doesn't move so much towards any sort of sci-fi element, because I think what I really liked in this was like the family.
We are well beyond that already.
Well, no, but I mean, like showing the US like launching nuclear missiles at China. That's not science fiction. Like it's dystopia, but it's not strictly sci-fi. So I mean, like I hope it goes more in that direction, and like how it deals with the way the family treats each other at the prospect of the end of the world. That's the stuff which I thought was like really effective, and which I hope they continue to develop, as opposed to like the technology stuff. Because I mean, we have Black Mirror, you know? I mean, I'm surprised we've gone this long without mentioning Black Mirror, but yeah.
Are you worried about the kind of Black Mirror effect of something you predict coming true?
Well, I kind of love the Black Mirror effect because that's one of the best shows in the world.
Sure.
Anything that shines on us is very nice, but...
Well, the Torchwood Children of Earth is what I think more, because that's another Russell series that's sci-fi, kind of apocalyptic, at least for a little while. Certainly in episode 5 when the police are taking the kids and everything. If he keeps the tone like that, I think it'll all be fine, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm expecting more sci-fi as we go further on.
Yeah, when you mentioned Doctor Who equivalent of this, all I can think is that this is pretty much this is like his new Torchwood miniseries. You know? This is Torchwood series 6, only instead of being about, or I guess 5, only instead of being about Torchwood, it's about this family, which Torchwood kind of was by the end.
If we were going to get any Universe shout out, I would have thought it would be Trinity Wells, the newsreader from his era, in one of the news montage sequences.
Yeah, I half expected that too.
Or you could have just gone ahead and made these guys like, instead of the Lions, they could have been the Daniels family of Southampton. Or, you know, just a little treat for the
Nine's
fans.
constant companion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have in my notes here, how upset must RTD be that Doctor Who was such a big hit that he can't call characters Rose or Tyler anymore, like he used to love to.
Well, he got Rosie in. Rosie's the cook sibling.
Rosie was my favourite family member.
I really liked her, yeah.
Which one was she?
She was a chef manager who was using the wheelchair.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, should we talk about just like who our favourite characters were, or who we
Yeah,
think
yeah.
the
Sure.
interesting ones are? I really like the budding rivalry between the General and the Gran. I think that's sort of fascinating.
That one was,
Because it's developed, it's so like, it's not foregrounded at all, but it's still so feels real, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops.
There's definitely a history of enmity there, isn't there? And I wonder if maybe racism has something to do with it, because we saw the Gran making that extremely inappropriate comment about the about Lynn at the end.
So, help me out here. Like, when I saw that, that's when I first thought of, like, the Blitz. I was like, oh yeah, that's that Blitz spirit. Let's make a joke about how we're probably not going to die. Then I thought, wait, would she be old enough to remember that?
Well, she turned
She's
90
old enough
in 2022, I think.
Yeah, she should have been alive during it.
I remember they said Vivian Rook was born in 1964, so she'd be early mid-50s, late 50s by 2024.
Yes, we haven't talked about Viv at all, have we?
The episode barely does.
I'm interested, is she... Are we never going to get scenes of her like on her own? Is she going to be filtered purely through the TV and how the family experiences are? Because I'm kind of getting that vibe, although that might just be a first episode thing.
I kind of hope they go that way, but I could see them doing like a Viv episode.
Yeah, and I'm struggling to imagine how they're going to get her like with the family in a way that isn't contrived.
Maybe Jessica Hines' activist character Edith, maybe?
Somebody could try to assassinate her.
I think the bigger that Viv gets, because I imagine it's not unrealistic to think that she might become Prime Minister at some point later in the series. I think, you know, the more powerful she gets, the more that she's inevitably going to intersect with what's happening to the family, even if they don't actually meet in person, or maybe they go to one of her rallies or something like that. Like, I don't expect like a Viv-focused episode, but like she's going to end up being, you know, quite important, like one way or the other.
In the sequence at the end with the Tovey sex and the burning the camp and all that, The billboard of Vivian kept getting kind of cut to like closer on the zoom each time to kind of foreground the connection between dark and divided times and politicians like her. So I'm sure she'll succeed as she goes forward.
Did you notice when she's talking about the fake news media, she's doing the Trump hand motions?
Yes, I did notice that.
It was a little bit more Colbert than Trump, but it was pretty clear still.
There was something weirdly like culture shock for me, sort of seeing how those things are so American, like not just the hand gestures, but even just like the rhetoric, like the fake news media, like that's a Trump kind of statement. You don't really, I don't think you get a British politician saying that kind of language quite as much. Because like, I mean, you know, not least because
an exact quote that was unusual.
Yeah, not least because over here, I mean, the media like absolutely, you know, loves fascist goons. So,
So another Doctor Who comparison. I almost hate myself for making them because like it's like all I can bring to this.
It's the lowest denominator of discussion, Doctor Who equivalents.
But we have like a blonde woman, working class accent. You can almost imagine 13 saying, honestly, I don't give a fuck about Kablam and the workers' rights. It's like in a populist sort of vein, I thought.
That's maybe a bit harsh, but I do see where you're coming from.
I mean, I did think that like Emma Thompson has already brought like a lot.
Would have been a great 13.
Well, true, yeah, but I mean, given that she has very little to do in this, she's already brought like a lot to the part, I think.
Yeah, that's what happens when you cut. Well, this is the chill approach, really. It's you can write whatever. It can be as terrible as you want. Look at broad, but if you cast great actors, it'll sing. It'll look excellent. People will think it's fantastically written. Another show co-produced, or maybe fully produced by HBO, is experiencing that similar kind of thing right now where the aesthetics can all be done very well, and if you hire great actors, any tripe you write will seem like a great line. Any dialogue at all will seem fantastic.
On the other hand, it seems like there is an upper limit on that.
Yeah, well, not everyone's Emma Thompson. There's a finite amount of them in the world.
Which brings me to a topic that I feel like you're trying to steer us towards, but at the same time trying to steer us away from. What parts didn't you like?
I found you can probably call it maybe dystopia porn.
History and society seems to be mad at the moment. It seems to be quite a fevered time. So it's trying to capture that, it's trying to guess where we're going.
I find it a little... it's like when we get... Yeah, when we get these well-off characters, like we talked about earlier, groaning about how the world's been punctured and no great art is made anymore. Maybe that's a comment on Chibnall as well. Anyway, it just... It feels very... it's like there's an enjoyment... You know, there's a reason people love post-apocalyptic stuff, and there's a reason there are so many survivalists, and there's a reason people love Fallout and Metro and all that kind of thing. It's a little larpy to me to like have these huge epic sequences. Oh, the world's falling apart. I guess the whole series is kind of built off that. I hope it won't feel indulgent as it goes forward, because I was getting a little bit of that vibe towards the end sequence, at least.
I felt between all the different times we hear characters going on about how, like, oh, well, you know, until a few years ago it was all fine, you know, things used to make sense, or the left was the left and the right was the right, although obviously that's said by Emma Thompson's character, who might be, you know, the bad guy. But then later on you get other characters who were like, oh, you know, nothing makes sense anymore, the world's going backwards and our brains are devolving and all that stuff, and all that weirdly kind of slightly almost eugenicist sake of like how all mankind is devolving and stuff like that. I feel like that all falls into this category of like, I don't want to sound, you know, like Trump tweets here, but like, it all sounds a bit liberal in that sense of sort of not having much of like a material grounding in like what's really happening in the world, but existing kind of this bubble of privilege almost, and just kind of like lamenting kind of the popping of that bubble, rather than actually, you know, expressing like a realistic kind of characterization of what's going on in the world. And I wonder, I mean, you know, it might be that the show is not as invested.
They're also disdainful of Edith.
Yeah. They went about Edith a bit. I think it might be that Edith emerges as more of like the most heroic figure, maybe, as the series goes on. That might be interesting.
Yeah. When you speak about bubbles being popped, it reminds me of the character Toby is having sex with towards the end is the little boy from Mr. Bean's Holiday.
Wow, what a wonderful...
What the actual fuck?
Take us in that direction. Man, that whole plot is one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, there's your characteristic RTD character making the stupidest possible decision they can.
Well, it felt more like a Tarantino character to me.
And you also are a
foot fan, yeah.
Yeah, that too. I didn't know this about RTD, that he's into that.
He's a foot fan.
All right. I have to say obsession. All right. I don't have. Fetish. I like them.
We've already known that RTD was a foot fan since he's crushing on Russell Tovey. I mean, look at the guy's head. But I think
nice.
I think it was interesting how eager Russell Tovey's character was to just go into that foot massage for that guy who he's just met. It's like something was going wrong in this guy's marriage well before any of this. Like, come on.
Yeah. Daniel seems to be incapable of recognizing when he's getting played. He has no ability to judge people. I mean, that's probably why he's so shocked to find out that his husband, who he's been married to for at least a year at that point, or like 2 or 3 years, is a flat earther.
Did you guys what did you guys think of that bit where the husband was like sort of washing his feces contaminated hands in the shower? I feel like that was symbolic, but what's it serving in the episode? It's very interesting.
I think it's just one of Russell's like delightful, like weird personal details rather than an allegory for anything.
It's domesticity.
It's like how does he think of something so like banal but just fascinating as well? And it made me think, like, what would I do if I was in the shower and someone tried to wash their shitty hands? It was thought-provoking.
They aren't shitty.
But on the subject of things we didn't like, I thought it was kind of an interesting choice to leave all the exposition about China and the US to Jessica Hines at the end. Because on the one hand, I can understand it on a storytelling level because she's the only character who actually cares. So it makes sense that all that information would be withheld from us, like, because everyone's so apathetic and kind of disconnected and disillusioned. But like on a dramatic level, it would have worked if RTD was better at exposition, but he's not the best at it. So it kind of felt like a lull in what should have been a really exciting scene.
In the writer's tale, Russell has that section where he flat out says he likes not using exposition because it's this revolutionary, brand new form of storytelling, when he's trying to justify the paradox machine in Last of the Time Lords or something to Benjamin Cook. And he's saying how not using foreshadowing is this really modern, daring technique. It's like, is it?
The way I see it, like, it's either this or lots of like newsreel sequences of lots of different newsreaders telling us what's happening with RTD. Yeah, we got a bit of that, but like
it was kind of obvious from the start what was going to happen. But yeah, we were sort of getting medium of both worlds.
Yeah, I mock his approach to that kind of thing, but I actually didn't have a problem with it in this show, in this episode, because this is how characters in the liberal bubble, like Gig said, see news like that. They'll hear little glimpses of it like we did, but they're not really thinking about it or parsing what's actually going on until it affects them very directly at the end.
On a story level, I liked it, but on a drama level, I thought it could have been more deftly executed, basically. And you brought up the writer's tale. That's just reminded me that because Russell is so anti-dream sequences, that means we're probably not going to get Mirrors' theory about it.
Yeah.
So we can be thankful for that. We can count our blessings there.
Didn't he tell his husband that Years and Years was rubbish? Maybe that's why.
I mean, his husband was dying, so...
Yeah, that's depressing though. Sorry.
Again, I keep dragging us into the most depressing... I've got another depressing thing to say later on.
Okay.
I know a happy thing to say to break it up in the middle, in that for all of Russell's hatred of dream sequences, we see he still has his friendship with Moffat very well sustained, and it's because RTD, as an atheist, doesn't watch the Christmas specials, so he never saw Last Christmas.
Interesting that the characters in this have sort of an alternative festival to Christmas. Like, they skip Christmas because they do this thing on their Muriel's birthday instead. So that's that tradition of atheism running through this show as well.
It's RTD's militant atheism. Remember, he brought the Daleks back as... What did he bring them back as again?
Religious Daleks.
Not just that. Half human. That's actually a good point about their festivals taking over Christmas. And there's also not even an atheist or secular, but like a weird pagan thing going on with it.
Yeah, the winter feast.
And then the fire aspect, and the scene in the next time on where they're dancing around it.
This actually might be our key into understanding the transsexual thing. I think we might be misinterpreting the line. It's not winter feast, it's winter feast.
Oh God.
I thought I was the depressing one.
Oh, something, just a little detail that kind of they mentioned that Vivian Rook, she's part of the JJC think tank, and I'm just fascinated by that detail. Like, what does JJC stand for?
Jeremy.
You'd be like, I don't know,
Corbyn, Christ.
Everybody's going
jettison
Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn.
That's what happened to him. She jettisoned him off.
Oh yeah, you believe he's dead in this timeline, don't you, Neo?
Yeah, I genuinely think it's what makes the most sense to me, given the complete lack of anything eventuating there, and that he might not have got jettisoned off the planet, but that he died of a very natural heart attack or something.
I mean, Viv does say in the episode that Labour is dead. Maybe she meant that literally.
After the gas attack, Labour is dead, and the Tories are basically dead.
Well, my observation's stupid, so I'll make it quick. Don't you think that Vivian Rook is a very, villainy villain sort of name? Like, she might as well be called Villainous Crook or something like that. Like George Lucas school of naming characters.
Darth Icky.
She's named after a chess piece, so, I mean, what else do you need to know?
You were waiting the whole episode. That weren't you, Mira?
I've been waiting for a better point, but I couldn't think of one, so I just went for it now.
I'm wondering if, so this show hits America in about a month, yes? No?
June 24th.
Yeah. Right. So I'm wondering if it's going to just come and go without a trace, and, no one will...
Probably.
Yeah, because it seems like Russell's not really trying to grab the American audience with this.
Well, I'd been arguing with Gig that the Americans would like it, but I just heard an actual American say they probably won't, so forget all that.
I feel like it must come off quite weirdly to Americans. I mean, the whole, being so forthright about, okay, Trump's going to win and he's going to nuke this and stuff is going to happen. It's and also it feels so British. And I know Americans kind of love British stuff, but I wonder how it's going to play on HBO, which is doing stuff like, Chernobyl at the moment. It's such a disparity in terms of style and tone.
It's British, but it's not sort of like a marketable British. It's not.
Yeah.
Gran,
that's a way to put it.
She does the whole stiff upper lip, make the tea while the world is ending thing, but it's not presented as straightforward or cheerful. It's very sort of barbed and cutting.
Yeah. It's not much of a costume drama either, so can't sell it on PBS.
Tonally, it felt very appropriate for Australians, at least, this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's been raining. There's a thunderstorm all day, and we're just off the back of a profoundly disappointing election, so I can't think of a better time to talk about years and years, honestly.
Yeah. This is the sort of show that Americans would remake. If it's going to make it big here, it's going to be as a remake.
That's a really good point.
Like Grace Point to Broadchurch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even the title of this thing, Years and Years, it's a completely genreless title. You hear that and you think this show could be absolutely anything. Is it a comedy? Is it a drama?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a bad title. It's just completely unmarketable, And it doesn't have a snappy one-line pitch either. So, yeah, I think this is probably going to be forgotten, sadly.
A lot of RTD shows have titles that are really hard for search engines and stuff. A Very English Scandal, Cucumber, Bob and Rose. These aren't catchy titles.
Oh God, Bob and Rose is hard to look up, yeah. And in the opposite way, Doctor Who.
Well, Dark Season sounds like it's describing a certain season of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
One more little thing. I feel like the kid being born of a Chinese father is being used as some sort of weird symbolism to do with the rise of China. I felt that was there's something going on there, which with RTD, I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of that yet.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff in here that feels like I'm not sure if it's supposed to be symbolic. That. Let's call it the trans thing. In my notes, I just have it as the trans thing, especially with the existing connections between transhumanists and trans people. And then all this weird stuff with washing hands and washing feet. And I don't know what's going on. It might be nothing, but then again, sometimes he likes to throw in all this weird... Well, I mean, remember how he literally turns the Doctor into Jesus several times.
Yeah.
He's very much fond of going for the iconography.
Speaking of iconography, We haven't talked about visuals at all. I just want to note that bit near the end where we see Edith alone on the shore in the dark, lit up by the screen of her thing. Like that was great image. And I love the signal on her feed cutting out as the nuke is about to hit. That was a very cool moment, like visually.
The two shots I thought were really good in the episode was that one zooming down to Edith, like you said, and also the one of Bethany, the transhuman daughter, when we kind of go along to her side and we can see the filter and her real face in tandem.
That was good.
I watched this in like 480p, whatever, so like I'm gonna have to do a visual-oriented rewatch sometime soon because no one cares about this show enough to upload it to like piracy websites. If you wanted to go that route, you know.
My favorite single shot in the whole episode. It's not any of the fancy ones. It's when she's explaining that the guy was having sex with Keith the robot to her siblings. There's a 1 second insert shot of the robot's arm moving, and it's saying, "Hello, Tony." Oh man.
I liked how that sequence was shot with the siblings talking to each other all in their separate rooms in their houses, but just kind of the way it was cutting to them, it felt like they were in the same place, like how it was edited.
Yeah.
That was really nicely done, I thought. Just a little non-flashy way to direct it, but I thought it worked really well.
Little nod to Ryan Johnson and the Ray Kylo for Skype calls. Just a general note, isn't it amazing how, like, on the back of Chibnall, you watch this and Russell just so casually incorporates, like, little resentments and, like, people being patronizing to each other in ways that is so subtle that, like, you almost don't notice them.
Conflict.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that
character,
on a
personality,
insane level. It's like this ecosystem of characters who know each other, and it's just like, you take it for granted because Russell just does it so effortlessly, but it was extremely refreshing.
Yeah, every single character feels incredibly distinct. Like, that is a family. That is a range of really well-developed characters. They're all memorable. They're all distinct. They all have, like, a personality. It's
they don't
so
get on.
well done.
There's little cliques inside the family. It really feels like an actual family.
First shot of Davies is Doctor Who. First shot of Rose is like a view of the world from the sky. And the first shot of this is Viv staring down the barrel of the lens saying, "I don't understand the world." So there you go. There's an interesting little Doctor Who parallel there.
Oh, so my depressing thing, my last depressing thing that's on here, this episode, is Lee, the older son. His experience of World War III starting is almost exactly my experience of the Oklahoma City bombing. I was at my grandparents' house. I was looking for cartoon. And as I came across the news, everybody suddenly started acting very excited and concerned about what was going on. So this episode had like a weird, almost reaching into my head and pulling a memory out of my mind and putting it on screen. It was very alienating, but in a good way, I guess.
Yeah, it's all
that's fascinating.
Well, when you say reaching a memory out of your head and putting it onto the screen, I guess we're kind of endorsing what Bethany was talking about.
Yeah, could you imagine that? Somehow being able to recreate people's minds and personalities inside of a computer simulation? What a weird idea.
Guys, what if you could put a human in a computer and then put a computer in another human?
Wow, man.
Black Mirror Season 5 coming to Netflix.
Have you guys seen that real world headline from March of last year where it starts out like, it's from the Technology Review, it starts out like a normal, just cheerful headline. It's like, a startup is pitching a mind uploading service that is, quote, 100% fatal.
I have to.
Oh yeah, also, I don't know if this is like something I missed, but what's the deal with the dad of the family? Is he going to appear, do you think?
He's gotta.
Yeah, this is an Aaron to Ryan scenario.
Will it be like a surprising actor or just an unsurprising actor?
It could be Tenet.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he doesn't appear. Like, if they've cut him out of their life that completely, like, maybe that's it. You know, he's off with Jacqueline. You know, he's abandoned their mum who is dead, or whatever happens with them. Like, maybe we just don't see him.
What
like,
if
that's the possibility?
What if we're in the other universe and it's
Yes,
Meta 10? Yeah.
Oh, shit.
He's with Jackie. Oh my god.